The 28th of December 2017, His Excellency CDE Ed Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. The birth and growth of a cartel in the ICT sector in Zimbabwe 1.0 Introduction. Former Net1 Managing Director Award Kangai speaking during the Easy Call Net1 Cup press conference mid-December 2014 saw the appointment of Hon. Super Mandiwanzira as the Minister of Information Communication Technologies, Postal and Courier Services, replacing Hon. Webster K. Shamu. This event marked the birth of a cartel in the ICT sector in Zimbabwe, as will be fully explained below. 2.0 Net1 restructuring exercise. As early as 30 December 2014, out of the blues, the former chairman of the board, Mr. Alex Marufu, indicated in a text message to me that he was going to destroy empires in Net1. Soon afterwards, there began the talk of restructuring of Net1 management. There was no basis given for that restructuring exercise. I was invited to arrange for a lunch with the minister, Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, at the Meekles Hotel, where he wanted to know why I was against the appointment of Francis Mwindi, former CEO of Telecel, as Net1 Chief Operating Officer, and I gave him my reasons on the basis of his involvement with Net1's EasyCal prepaid platform under Brightpoint, a company that the late General Mujiru had interests and had supplied Net1 with a malfunctioning prepaid platform that cost Net1 loss of customers during the 19,981,999 period, and his exit too from PTC. I was later vindicated as he was unsuccessful during the vetting exercise by government. During the same lunch, the minister assured me of my position as CEO of Net1, but he wanted to bring management capacity in the company. Events that later unfolded suggest that the restructuring exercise at Net1 was meant to supplant management with his proxies. Indeed, during that restructuring exercise, Mrs. Sabuzisiwe Ndhlovu, formerly Executive Director for Retail Banking at Metbank, was appointed Chief Finance Officer at Net1, replacing Mr. Godfrey Tarupuwa, who was the company's finance director. Mrs. Sabuzisiwe Ndhlovu had been forced to resign from Metbank following a forensic audit at Afra Holding, the Patterson Timber saga at Renaissance Bank, sanctioned by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, found her unsuitable to hold public office. Following the unsuccessful security clearance Francis Mwindi for the post of coup at Net1, Mr. Brian Mutandiro was later appointed coup of Net1 when, in fact, he didn't meet the qualifications called for in the job advert. Details pertaining to that appointment were given to the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission ZACC Commissioner of Investigations, Mr. Goodson Nguni, on the 14th of March 2016. Mr. Brian Mutandiro is related to Hon. Super Mandiwanzira and has been acting CEO of Net1 since the 14th of March 2016. Incidentally, some of the reasons advanced for the failure to security clear Mr. Francis Mwindi relate to his tenure as Telecel CEO. He deposited large sums of Telecel funds into Metbank without the authority of the board. Telecel was later unable to withdraw the money to meet its license obligations with POTRAZ, resulting in the cancellation of its license. Mr. Mwindi is closely related to one of the owners of Metbank, hence the motivation to deposit Telecel funds into the bank, even without the authorization of the board of directors of the company. Mr. Kudakwash Nyashanu was appointed Executive Human Resources at Net1. Mr. Nyashanu was previously employed at Tarkon, a company in which Hon. Mandiwanzira has an interest. The CEO, Reward Kangai, was later dismissed following a forensic audit, which audit found no evidence of allegations that had been laid against him by Hon. Super Mandiwanzira and former board chairman, Mr. Alex Marufu. Mr. Darlington Gutu was retained as Chief Technical Officer. Sources from Net1 indicate that he was assured of being retained in his position if he came up with incriminating evidence against the former CEO, Reward Kangai, during the forensic audit. Indeed, he was a false witness to the forensic auditors, as he wrongfully indicated that Reward Kangai had changed sites for base stations, failed to develop base stations, etc., which allegations were not supported by facts. At board level, the minister fired 3 board members at the end of July 2016, namely Mrs. Thandiwe Malobane, Mrs. Dorothy Mapimhidze and Mr. Shepard Simondo, following the submission of the preliminary forensic audit report, which audit had found no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Netone management. This did not go down well with the minister. The fired board members were key in the forensic audit process. The 4 fired board members were immediately replaced by members close to Hon. Super Mandiwanzira. One of them, Mr. Peter Chingoka, is a non-executive director at Metbank and was to be later appointed chairman of Netone after Mr. Alex Marufu was forced to resign in December 2016. Mr. Alex Marufu's, despite being Hon. Super Mandiwanzira's hatchet man, had to resign as there was increasing pressure on the minister, as Mr. Marufu had relocated to South Africa, whilst Netone was being forced to pay for his travel costs to attend the unusually frequent Netone board meetings. Furthermore, he had, with the approval of the minister, been granted security guards at his Harare home at Netone's cost. This matter of abuse of office by Mr. Alex Marufu was raised with the Chief Secretary to the Office of the President and Cabinet on the 9th of December 2016. A copy of the document was presented to ZACC Commissioner for Investigations, Mr. Goodson Inguni, on the 9th of December 2016. With the above appointments at board and management, Netone, a state-owned entity SOE, has clearly been captured by Hon. Super Mandiwanzira. The chairman of the board, CEO, CFO and executive human resources are all linked to Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, as will be further expounded. 3.0 The Metbank connection. As has been explained earlier, the chairman of Netone, Mr. Peter Chingoka, is a non-executive director of Metbank. Mrs. Sabuzisiwe and DHLOVU, chief financial officer at Netone, is formerly a director at Metbank. Mr. Ozias Bvut, the CEO of Metbank, was appointed chairman of POTRAZ by the minister, Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, in April 2016. Brian Mutandiro had previously been appointed by the same minister to that 5 non-executive directorship position at POTRAZ but resigned to take up a more lucrative executive directorship position at Netone. The appointment of Mr. Ozias Bvut to POTRAZ by Hon. Super Mandiwanzira was made with the minister's full knowledge that at the time, Metbank owed POTRAZ $6.5 million, Netone $300,000. The amount was $700,000 but was reduced after Netone CEO, Reward Kangai, took legal action against Metbank. A move that didn't go down well with both Minister Mandiwanzira and Ozias Bvut. Communications and Allied Industries Pension Fund, CAIPF $1.6 million, POSB $2 million and Zimpost, exact amount unknown. The above entities except POSB and CAIPF are regulated by POTRAZ. Now, POTRAZ administers the Universal Services Fund USF, a fund that was created by the Postal and Telecommunications Services Act, Chapter 1205, for the purposes of developing postal and telecommunications services in underserviced areas that may not be commercially viable for operators to invest in such areas on their own. Soon after his appointment to the chairmanship of the POTRAZ board, Mr. Ozias Bvut reinstated the acting director general to his position as deputy director, who had previously been fired by the Ishmael Chikunhias board for violating a board resolution which had authorized POTRAZ to open an account with Metbank, but to limit deposits to a maximum of $500,000. Mr. Bvut went on to direct POTRAZ management to purchase stands at Crow Hill, Harare, using funds from the USF at $22.5 million, less the $6.5 million already deposited with Metbank. Notwithstanding that, the intended move was clearly not in line with the mandate of POTRAZ and certainly not in accordance with the intended use of the USF. In an article entitled "SIMDEF Loses Millions in Stands Scandal," The Herald, in its 20th of December 2017 publication, highlights details of how SIMDEF lost millions of dollars in a debt-and swap deal, where the value of the stands from the same Crow Hill area were grossly overvalued. Clearly, the appointment of Ozias Bvut to the position of chairman of POTRAZ, was intended for the purpose of looting state funds for the benefit of a cabal, with the minister, Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, at the center of it. The appointment at POTRAZ, which administers the cash-rich USF, was tantamount to setting a hyena to look after sheep, as Metbank, a bank that is managed by Mr. Bviut, had lost millions of US dollars of depositors, largely SOEs and parastatals' monies. Through his connections with powerful ministers, Mr. Bviut would coerce CEOs of SOEs and parastatals to open accounts with Metbank and deposit large amounts of cash into Metbank, which monies the institutions would not be able to withdraw. It is rumored that the Central Intelligence Organization, CIA, had not cleared Mr. Bviut's appointment for the POTRAZ board chairmanship, but was overruled by the Office of the President Cabinet, on instructions from the former First Lady. Under the POTRAZ chairmanship of Mr. Osias Bviut, $10 million of funds from USF were used as part payment of 60% shareholding in Telecel, a privately owned mobile telecommunications operator. The remaining $30 million came from NSSA. NSSA insisted on having a shareholding in Telecel after that payment, but Hon. Super Mandiwanzira is against that, hence NSSA is being reimbursed for its $30 million through the USF. The government's purchase of Telecel, a move that was initiated by Hon. Super 7 Mandiwanzira against a background wherein government of Zimbabwe already owns 100% shareholding in Netone, and have over the years failed to adequately capitalize the company, cannot possibly be in the interest of the government of Zimbabwe and its citizens. Worldwide, most governments have been disinvesting from the highly capital-intensive mobile communications business, as the industry is very attractive to foreign direct investment (FDI), leaving governments to focus funding on social services like health and education, which are not so attractive to FDI. It is unlikely that the minister would have been unaware of the folly of that move, but rather, it seems to support speculations that the purchase of Telecel by the government of Zimbabwe was only an intermediate step with the ultimate goal of benefiting powerful and well-connected individuals. There have been wide rumors that the true intention was to later sell Telecel to Unitel, owned by Isabel dos Santos, daughter of former Angolan President Eduardo dos Santos, for a mere $10 million profit, meant to woodwink the public whilst facilitating proxy shareholding to former First Lady and the Minister. This is the only plausible explanation that makes sense in the acquisition of Telecel by government of Zimbabwe. Already, Telecel has suffered a significant drop in both market share and revenue since its acquisition by government, clearly confirming a well-known view of government's inability to run business, particularly such a highly capital-intensive industry like mobile communications. Should government sell Telecel to a privately owned international mobile operator, Netone will ultimately flounder, as government bureaucracy and corruption continue to weigh down heavily on the company. The combined revenue of both government-owned mobile operators is less than 20% market share, whilst Econet rakes in 85% lion's share of the market. As shown by the year 2017, third quarterly statistics recently published by POTRAZ, Netone registered the lowest average revenue per user ARPU, a reflection of the dismal failure of the current management. Yet the new management under Mr. Brian Mutandiro inherited in 2016 a network that had registered an all-time record high number of greenfield base stations of 148 that were installed in 2015 under the previous management led by the writer. Revenue for year 2016 under Mr. Brian Mutandiro only increased by $1 million, notwithstanding the high number of base stations installed the previous year and the capital investment of $218 million made during the previous year under my management. It is rumored that the minister, Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, transferred a $25 million debt from CBZ Bank to Metbank. Due to bank-client confidentiality, the writer is not in a position to verify this. That verification is best dealt with by government investigators like the National Economic Conduct Inspectorate (NECI). Should this turn out to be true, it would explain the minister's appointments of Metbank directors at POTRAZ. and NetOwn to corruptly facilitate the minister's debt clearance at Metbank. The reported inflating of the Crow Hill stands seems to be the way state-owned enterprises and parastatals have been used by Metbank to prejudice those institutions with millions of state funds. At the time of writing this document, Telone management was being pressured by the minister to open an account with Metbank and deposit its funds with that bank. From the experiences of many SOEs, Telone will not be able to withdraw its funds from the bottomless pit of a bank and will likely be offered a land swap deal in the notorious Crow Hill stands, whose value will have been grossly inflated. Telone management is very vulnerable to such kind of pressures at this moment, as there is no board of directors and the managing director's contract of employment has deliberately not been extended almost a year after expiry. It is common cause that POTRAZ, NetOwn and Zimposts were coerced into opening accounts with Metbank and depositing the cash collections with that bank. The former POTRAZ Director General Eng. Charles M. Banda objected to depositing POTRAZ funds with Metbank, resulting in his contract of employment not being renewed. It is also pertinent to point out that Tarkon, a company in which Minister Mandiwanzira has an interest, is contracted to service the Crow Hill stands. Thus, Minister Mandiwanzira is a beneficiary of the abuse of SOE funds deposited with Metbank. It is also interesting to note that the chairman of Metbank, Mr. W. Mayonnaise, is the lawyer representing the former First Lady on the matter relating to the $1.35 million diamond ring saga. Mr. W. Mayonnaise also represents BackNet Trading, a company that was sued by NetOwn, along with the Minister of Local Government and National Housing, in a dispute wherein the Minister of Local Government was attempting to take some 131,000 hectares of NetOwn land at Cleveland granted under deed of grant registered on the 10th of September 1953, registration number 13,832, and later under consent number 471,775 on 3,121,975. Case No. HC 1,081,213 of 17 December 2013 refers. The case involves the illegal subdivision of Lot A of Chikurubi private land belonging to NetOwn into residential stands, which was done on the 10 instructions of former local government and housing Minister Ignatius Chombo. Some of the stands went on to be sold for $60,000, and when the purchasers failed to get title deeds, they reported the matter to the police. When I was forced out of NetOwn in March 2016, the case was pending at the Supreme Court, after NetOwn had won at the High Court but the respondents appealed at the Supreme Court. The subdivision of the land on Lot A of Chikurubi is against the conditions set out in the deed of grant. A Mr. Charles Chombo of BackNet Trading was to be the beneficiary of the land that was to be usurped from NetOwn through abuse of office by then Minister of Local Government and National Housing 4.0 Telone. After supplanting NetOwn management, the minister, Hon. Super Mandiwanzira's next victim was to be Telone Managing Director Mrs. Chipo Mtasa and Finance Director Mrs. Ellen Shivaviro. Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, in a move that bears striking resemblance to what he did at NetOwn and has become his hallmark, orchestrated the publication of an article entitled Telone Reels Under a $378 million debt in the Zimbabwe Independent newspaper of 24 December 2016. The objective behind the article was a smear campaign against the Telone Managing Director and Finance Director to justify non-renewal of their contracts of employment, as the minister had so directed the board. In much the same way, NetOwn management was wrongly blamed by the minister and former board chairman of siphoning $11 million of NetOwn funds through First L. The article wrongly blamed Telone management for the $378 million Telone debt, and yet almost $300 million of that was legacy debt incurred by the former Posts and Telecommunications Corporation (PTC) during the 1980s-90s timeframe, well before both the current board and management joined Telone. Mrs. Ellen Shivaviro employment contract was not renewed and the managing director, Mrs. Chipo Mtasa, has been working without a contract for almost a year. It is known that Hon. Super Mandiwanzira intends to replace them with his proxies and thus complete the capture of the regulatory body POTRAZ and SOEs in the ICT sector in Zimbabwe. 5.0 Recommendation. It is recommended that the government of Zimbabwe urgently undertakes the following: dissolve the board of directors of Netone, sending Netone key management on forced leave pending the outcome of investigations by Commission of Inquiry. These are the acting CEO, Brian Mutandiro, CFO, Mrs. Sabuzisiwe and DHLOVU, CTO, Mr. Darlington Gutu, and Executive Human Resources, Mr. Kudakwashanayashanu, setting up a commission of inquiry into the operations of Netone, covering the restructuring exercise carried out in 2015, alleged payments of $10,000 a week to Hon. Super Mandiwanzira, and the appointment of Megawatt Energy by the Minister for a consultancy fee of $4 million, and whether the minister was not conflicted in the alleged bribing of the minister by ZTEA, company that is linked to Mr. Lai Xiaodong of Megawatt Energy. It is also alleged that similar payments are being done by Telone to the minister. The parceling of advertising jobs to VPCG after losing to Jericho. Hon. Super Mandiwanzira is reportedly linked to the CEO of VPCG, Mr. Rejmak Ushetty. The 12 Commission of Inquiry to investigate the whole ICT sector, POTRAZ, Telone, Netone and Telecel. An interim board for Netone comprising ministry officials be set up under the chairmanship of the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Eng. Sam Kundasara. Mr. Ozias be viewed to be suspended as chairman of POTRAZ. To clear the way for those investigations, government to also investigate the efficacy of its acquisition of Telecel and the use of funds from the USF, including whether or not there was a violation of the Postal and Telecommunications Act, Chapter 1205 by the POTRAZ and the Minister, the abuse of the USF in purchasing vehicles for the Minister and loans being advanced to bodies like ZIFA, clearly not intended for the purpose for which USF was established. Yours faithfully, Reward Kangai, Seng, MIET. Mobile 263,712,800,026. WhatsApp 27,640,509,501.